have mail.
Mm-hmm. You've got mail.
Being Tom Hanks. You know what we need in here? Coats.
Yeah, that would be good.
Mr. Phelps, are there any extra coat racks around?
Good afternoon, and welcome to our Glendale City Council workshop. This meeting is for council members to review and discuss important issues, projects, and future council meeting agenda items. It's a work-study session only and allows the council to hear input from city staff. No action will be taken at this workshop, and there will not be an opportunity for public comment. This meeting is streaming live on Glendale's Facebook and YouTube pages and the city's cable television station, Glendale Channel 11. Thank you for joining us.
And good afternoon. Welcome Glendale City Council Workshop Session of August 13th, 2024. This meeting is called to order. I'm not going to call attendance roll call because everybody's here. If you take note, that'd be awesome. And with that, Ms. Bauer, would you introduce item number 1 for us?
Valley Benchmark Communities 2022-2023 update.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. Welcome back. I hesitate to say from your time off because I know each of you stay very busy even during the month we're not meeting, but we're ready to jump back into today, and we have a number of different items. The first is going to be headed by Jenny Durda, who's our Director of Department of Organizational Performance. Jenny?
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We're here to provide our annual update on our engagement with the Valley Benchmark Communities organization. These are the things that we're going to touch on briefly. I'm going to share with you the purpose of Valley Benchmark Communities, and then I'll turn it over to Stephen Gushu, who's our representative for the City of Glendale with that organization. So Valley Benchmark Communities is a benchmarking organization that gets together, comes to an agreement on metrics that we can look at to compare cities. But really the main focus of Valley Benchmark Communities is to see where we perform well and how we can get ideas from each other to improve our individual performance. We talk about things like data practices, performance, and then areas where individual cities are high performing. With that, I'll turn the remainder of our presentation over to Mr. Gushu.
Thank you, Ms. Durda. As a reminder, the Valley Benchmark Communities, or VBC, are hosted by the Marvin Andrews and Jay Morris Fellow Programs at ASU and the Center for Urban Innovation at ASU. This year's fellow will be Matthew Billings. In addition to ASU's role in this organization, the Maricopa Association of Governments is also a partner with the VBC. Along with the partnerships mentioned, the Valley Benchmark Communities comprises 13 local governments across the valley: Avondale, Buckeye, Chandler, Gilbert, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Queen Creek, Scottsdale, Surprise, and Tempe. This past year, VBC held board seat elections. I want to thank our own Jenny Durda for serving as board chair for the past 2 years. The current board consists of Torrin Sadow, who will be the chair, William Brooks, who will be the membership vice chair, and Janice Hart, who will be the vice chair of data. They will each serve a 2-year term. The fiscal year 2022-2023 report continues the format from last year, including metrics for Glendale and the West Valley median in our individualized report. Cities included in the West Valley median statistic are Avondale, Buckeye, Glendale, Goodyear, Peoria, and Surprise. The report helps the City of Glendale identify strengths to build upon opportunities where we can improve. The deep connection between the communities helps us go beyond comparing statistics. It helps us understand the differences and similarities our communities, so we can take what is useful to them and adapt it to Glendale and our unique characteristics. There were 3 new metrics proposed last year, and they were added to the report published in the spring of 2024. These metrics are total full-time equivalents dedicated to permit processing, number of permits issued for single-family standard plans, and the average turnaround time for single-family standard plans in business days. Looking ahead, and actually looking behind, the annual performance management forum was held on August 8th, a week ago. Topics included AI in government, data dashboard best practices, and using data to address homelessness. This year, Valley Benchmark Communities will be working on reviewing the metrics in the report. The 3 areas that will be covered are reviewing and evaluating the current metrics and looking to standardize them by population size, reviewing how demographic data are collected and evaluating whether business and labor statistics are needed or could be incorporated, and completing a deep dive on the current parks and recreation metrics that are in the annual report. With that, I am open to answering any questions the mayor or council may have regarding the annual VBC report.
Any questions? No? Okay, I guess we don't have any questions for you. Best kind of presentation, just quick. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Ms. Bauer, item 2.
Zoning text amendment, ZTA 24-XX, accessory use conditions, accessory dwelling unit.
Mayor, members of council, here to provide staff report is Deputy Director of Development Services Tabitha Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today, staff is seeking consensus to proceed forward with a text amendment amending ADU, accessory dwelling units regulations in the UDC, Unified Development Code, to comply with State Statute House Bill 2720, which was approved this year and goes in effect January the 1st of 2025. The House bill allows, in summary, it regulates no minimum lot sizes requirements where the UDC requires a minimum lot size of 8,000 square feet. The House bill regulates one attached and one detached unit for a total of 2, with an option for a minimum of 1 additional detached unit with conditions, those conditions being a minimum of 1 acre lot size and such unit to be restricted affordable unit. The House bill regulates allowable size of the ADU to be 75% of the gross floor area of existing single-family dwelling, or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less for ADU. Whereas the UDC requires a maximum of 50% of the existing principal dwelling unit. The House bill also provides things that are prohibited. Cities cannot require additional parking regulations for ADUs. This regulation will not impact the existing parking regulations that is within the city code as well as in the UDC. The cities cannot impose more restrictive regulations. As an example, the height, the UDC right now for residential zoning has a maximum of 16 feet in height for ADU, whereas based on this bill, ADU can have a maximum of 30 feet in height, which is per the zoning district. And also, cities cannot regulate a greater rear and side setback of 5 feet. Whereas today, the UDC regulates the first 7 feet in height at 3 feet, and every foot above that an additional 2 feet. On this slide and the next 2 slides is just an example of how the text amendment could look. As you can see in the UDC to date, it says that an accessory dwelling unit shall be constructed of similar materials, colors, and architectural style to the principal dwelling. We would now change that to say should, where staff would encourage a property owner to develop the proposed ADU to be complementary to the principal dwelling unit versus requiring it. The League of Towns and Cities is working on a model ordinance. Once the cities receive that model ordinance, we will look at that in comparison to the initial work that staff will undertake before bringing it back before Planning Commission and City Council for a final vote. Once again, today's motion to provide a consensus to proceed is in accordance with the UDC regulation. It's not a final action. It would just allow staff an opportunity to proceed forward with doing the research in hopes of having the proposed text amendment before council in November or December. If staff do not bring forward a proposed draft text amendment before council for a vote before January the 1st, then ADUs will be allowed without limitations. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead. Warren.
Oh, you're pointing at me. I thought you were pointing at him. Thank you. I'm out of practice. Thank you, Mayor. I have a question on the that additional parking requirements are prohibited. So are they, I'm just curious, like occasionally, I don't know how often the city does it, but depending on traffic issues and proximity to school and other places where you might find a lot of pedestrians, the city will go out and put up no parking signs along residential streets. What if there's ADUs on that street? Are we prohibited from putting no parking signs on that street, or has that even been discussed? Do you have to have no parking restrictions within a certain distance of an ADU? How would we handle that?
Mayor and Council, that is a great question. It is one that we will have to go back and do some research on it. Using your example, that's not specific to an ADU, where the state statute is basically saying that we cannot impose specific parking regulations specific to the ADU. So I don't think it will impact that the way the city operates today, but I will take that back and do some research and take it into consideration with the text amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have two questions. Is there anything the city can regulate? Did they leave anything for the city to regulate? And I understand that you're going to bring an ordinance back before council at a workshop before we take a final vote. Is that correct? So two things. Is there anything the city can regulate, and will the final ordinance come before council and workshop?
Mayor and council, with the consensus, if it pleases the council for us to bring back the draft document before the workshop, we can do that. For the first question, as far as what can we regulate, staff is venting that and looking into that. Once again, I think we also want to take some direction from the model ordinance. If I use an example, the House bill indicate that an ADU has to comply with our building and fire codes regulations. The bill also says that an ADU may have a kitchen. So when you look at a single family residential, we do not require them to have a full kitchen. It's kind of implied that they will have one. If you were to look at an ADU and take the may, and if council was to direct us to say that it's required, I think there's a couple of things staff would want to evaluate. One is the reason why an individual is wanting to have an ADU. So if I'm choosing to construct an ADU because my mother has Alzheimer's, now I can't say it, Alzheimer's, okay, forgive me. I may not want her to have a kitchen in any capacity. But if I'm utilizing it for guests, relatives that comes in town, I may want to regulate it for them to have a kitchen. So because we don't regulate a full kitchen for a single family residential, as of right now, my understanding would be that we would not be able to be more restrictive by requiring it for an ADU. But once again, staff is looking into this to see if there's areas where we could become a little bit more restrictive that would be acceptable and not in opposition of the House bill.
Okay, so would any items that the city could regulate, such as kitchens or no kitchens, be brought back to us for consideration at workshop?
Mayor and council, we can research that and come back in a workshop for further discussions, if that pleases council.
Well, I think we should. If there's anything that the city has the option of regulating, I think it should be discussed at workshop. My final question is, there's been no discussion of HOAs. And from our previous conversations, it's my understanding that HOAs are not regulated by this state preemption. Is that correct?
Mayor and council, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Melner.
Thank you, Mayor. My question has to do with parking as well. When we did a review, one of the questions that I had was, we have parking regulations regarding how many cars can be parked in a front yard, et cetera. So let's say they do add an additional unit, and there's no space under our current regulations that would allow an additional car to park there. Our regulations regarding parking in front yards still stay intact?
Mayor and council, our current regulations for parking will stay intact. And if there's parking on the site that is not in compliance with those parking regulations, then they will be cited by code.
Then they would what? Excuse
Then
me?
they will be cited by code.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Perry, I would echo the earlier concern regarding the kitchen in an ADU. Thinking through the possible scenarios, even the example that you provided, that may be the desire at the time of construction, but down the road, things could certainly change. And so we might, possibly look at least providing the stub outs for what would be required for a kitchen and at least a 3/4 bath, so that that's taken at that time, but not necessarily force the homeowner into the expense of buying the appliances and everything if in fact that's not their intended use. I think there's other options. I like the idea of having staff brainstorm and maybe talk to other cities about what is left that we might need to be looking at that we're not catching already in house, and obviously I'd like to hear from our residents if what their concerns are that we might be missing. Thank you.
Okay, so what do you need from us right now?
Mayor, council, need a consensus to proceed forward with the work needed for the text amendment.
Consensus to move forward? Yeah. Okay. Ms. Bauer, item 3, if you would.
Water exchange agreement with the city of Goodyear.
Mayor, members of the council, here to provide the next staff report will be Ron Serio, our Director of Water Services.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Back in May, when we did our water resources update, we had mentioned that we were working on a water exchange agreement. I'm happy to report that over the summer, we did work with the city of Goodyear and tentatively came to agreement on an exchange agreement subject to council approval, of course. This item today is an informational item, so we're not asking for any action today, but this item is also on tonight's voting meeting agenda, where there will be formal action taken. So this is a really good news item for Glendale. This agreement will allow Glendale to exchange our water that's in the Salt River system for Goodyear's Colorado River water. So the way that would work, under a cut, and we've talked about, we're anticipating future allocation cuts on the Colorado River. So without this agreement, we would take our Salt River water, treat it at the Choya water treatment plant, and then pump it through 2 different very large booster stations to get it up to the north part of the city. With this agreement in place, what we would do is when we would take Goodyear CAP water at our Pyramid Peak plant north of the city, treat it there, and let gravity take it down into the north part of the city, just like we operate today, like we normally operate. And then the exchange would be, we would provide our SRP water to Goodyear in the same quantity. So the benefits of that are we would not have to change our operation, so it would be business as usual. Secondly, I think it would be more reliable because we're using gravity to move the water down into the system instead of a series of pumps. And then finally, it is more cost effective. We end up saving money by doing this because pumping water is very expensive. So as we move forward, Drew's going to talk about some more details of this agreement. He's going to talk about Glendale and Goodyear's Colorado River supplies, some mechanics of the agreement, the benefits and limitations, and what the next steps would be. So with that, I'll turn it over to Drew.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As you know, as I've given you a whole bunch of information on our Colorado River supplies, if you can go to the next. We do have about 22,500 acre feet of Colorado River water. That water, our Pyramid Peak plant is right next to the canal, so it's really easy. We can just take an inlet, bring that Colorado water in. As Ron said, it's gravity flowed through the city down from higher elevation to lower elevation, and it's used pretty much on non-SRP lands. We use that kind of in the north of the city on what we call non-project lands, SRP lands. So the Colorado River via the CAP, this is a really great collaboration for water projects between the city of Goodyear and the city of Glendale. We're really looking to do more of this. How can we move our water more efficiently? What type of projects will really benefit both cities? And this really does benefit both Goodyear and Glendale. And really with Glendale, I think having the most benefit out of this exchange. The total Colorado River supplies for Goodyear are about 17,742. And they deliver it a little differently than we do. Unfortunately, they don't have the canal going by, so what they have to do is they have to use the SRP system. So they take that CAP water that's flowing in the CAP canal, it goes to then what we call the CAP SRP interconnect facility. Then it's put in the SRP system. It goes in the SRP system. This is still their Colorado River water through canals and through laterals. Then it is delivered to their plant in Goodyear. So it's a little different. Their water, the good thing is their CAP water comes right by our system. Of course, it's in the CAP canal before it travels all the way down to the interconnect, which is by Granite Reef Dam to the east of the valley. And here you'll notice, I think if we click one more time, is it down there? Yeah, there we go. So that's the Pyramid Peak plant. It's, of course, located in the city of Phoenix, way up high. We get that good gravity feed. You can see the blue line to the north is the CAP canal. So we're located right on there, great. And that's why we located the plant there too, because we could get that water right directly into the plant. This is the CAP SRP interconnect facility where it is transferred, where Goodyear's water will be transferred into CAP water, will be transferred into the SRP canal and lateral system to eventually end up in the city of Goodyear, shown at the last square box. And that is kind of the whole system in a nutshell right there. So, as I said, the exchange between Glendale's SRP and CAP supplies is a great collaboration between both cities. Glendale's SRP supplies include both association water, that's our water behind the dams that we have rights to. We have new conservation space water, and that's behind Roosevelt when they rose Roosevelt Dam by 77 feet. So we have about 27,250 feet that we can store in there in good years. And then also flood control space, and this is when things are even above that new conservation space water, when it is a really good, excellent runoff year, and we have about 5,600 acre feet of that. So those are the types of waters we can use. One other additional one is recovered water. We have stored some water in SRP service area that we can take out by wells. It's CAP water and NCS water. We can take that water out, put it in the canal, and also exchange that with the city of Goodyear, giving us another option. For Goodyear's Colorado River supply, it's basically their municipal and industrial priority, and that's that 17,000. We're proposing to exchange up to 8,500 acre feet per year for 10 years with a potential for renewing that IGA that you will see. And this, that's a little dark to see. pull this up. So how the exchange really would work, Glendale and Goodyear, we would have to agree to a volume to exchange right around the October timeframe. So we would say, hey, what are you guys looking at? What about up to 8,500 acre feet? Goodyear orders the CAP water for delivery to our Pyramid Peak plant, and that's during the October timeframe, again, when CAP takes those orders. Glendale would order its water from the SRP system. We would notify SRP what we're going to be exchanging. And then, like we said, Goodyear receives its water at the same location and volume as it does today, no difference. And Glendale then would reimburse Goodyear for a portion of Goodyear's lease fee, and that's that CAP SRP interconnect facility. They pay a per acre foot volume for that, for their total, I think it's 25,000 acre feet. They had to do it a little higher. So that's their total amount that they pay. We would be paying a portion, only the portion that we exchange for that. And if you go to the next page there, yeah, it's benefits and limitations. So really the benefits, this is a great idea for when we do have some shortages on our CAP system. This is a way to make us whole as long as we don't totally run out of CAP, which we're hoping we don't. Transfers water supplies really to the north portion of the city, so we don't have to boost, like Ron was talking about, and that cost associated with taking SRP supplies and boosting that off project up to our CAP area. There's really no capital investment. We really don't need any new infrastructure, so that's great for the city. And it can be also used in this year and next year, 24 and 25, to support system conservation. This is if we save water in Lake Mead. Last year we received $2.8 million for that at $400 per acre foot. So this would be applied to, if we can get it done in 24 and then 25, to bring in more money for the city based on that. The limitations, like I said, it really doesn't work if we run out of Colorado because there's really nothing to exchange on Goodyear's side. So we're hoping that doesn't happen. And then there's also limits to the available amounts of NCS and the flood control water. So like we said, NCS, even that new conservation space behind Roosevelt, is really how much precip. We have great winters, it fills up. If we get even greater winters, our FCS supplies come in. But we do have other things like that recovered water and our association water that we still could use for this exchange. So the estimated cost to Glendale, when we looked at that cost of administration fees to SRP and what we're paying for that CAP SRP interconnect facility, is less than $2,000 a year for the entire 10-year period. It's about $113 starting at 24 and escalating to about $190 in 2023 or 2033. The good thing is we have a lot of potential energy and treatment savings for Glendale of about $800,000 per year. That's what Ron was discussing, that we don't have to boost that SRP, that NCS and FCS off project. So that saves an electric cost and also saves in treating our SRP water, which is a little more expensive to treat than our CAP water. So we have a net savings impact of about $600,000 from this project. So, of course, tonight, at tonight's council meeting, you'll be voting on the IGA between us and between the city of Goodyear and Glendale. Along with this, there's some other agreements that have to fall in place for this to work. One is an implementation agreement that is voted on by the CAWCD board on if they, it's kind of the agreement, it's kind of like the nuts and bolts, kind of the internal workings of how CAP does things. What we would like to do is, at a later council voting meeting, bring this to you, not have a workshop, but just say it's part of this IGA. It really has the same impact and same kind of things. It's just more centralized on what CAP wants us to do within kind of the ordering process and really the mechanics of that. So this implementation agreement will be approved by the CAWCD board, and then it will come to you probably in a September voting meeting. Then after all that's done, we will submit both the IGA and the implementation agreement to the Bureau of Reclamation for approval. They'll take that, they'll look at it. It's really not a formal process. They'll just send a letter back to CAWCD saying, we've looked at this, we think it's a good deal, we don't see anything wrong, and then we're good to go from that end of both the IGA and the implementation agreement. So the last step of this is getting an exchange permit through the Arizona Department of Water Resources. So that's our last step. We do have that in for review to the Department of Water Resources. We're hoping that that can be done by the end of the year or earlier, so we can get everything going with this exchange agreement. So those are kind of the steps that we're looking at for all of the exchange agreement, and I think that's it. If you have any questions.
Yeah, I've got a couple for you. You almost answered one question, but not quite. So with the water that we have, we're not going to run out of water tomorrow if we had a bad drought today. It's a long time down the road, but we can see it and plan. And so the first question is, what would happen if we couldn't get the water we need from CAP? Is there a clause in there that basically says if we get into that emergency situation, all bets are off, we go back to the original? What is the definition? How is that going to work? And that's one question. The other question is, what's the benefit to Goodyear? What's the benefit to Goodyear? I understand our benefit, but what's Goodyear getting out of it?
Mayor and Council, I'll answer your second question first.
Okay.
We're actually paying some of that fixed cost for them for the CSIF. You know, they have to pay the full cost up front if they use that full volume or not. So we're actually, if we take 8,500 acre feet, I believe the cost of that is about $27 per acre foot. So we're actually reimbursing them some money for that, for use of that interchange facility. So they're actually getting, the benefit is more financial for them.
But yet that's not even a monster small amount.
No, and I think Goodyear is a great city. They want to collaborate with other West Side cities, and I think we're hoping in the future we can collaborate on more projects with the city of Goodyear. So they're just being really good partners, you know, and really going into this agreement with that in mind, I believe.
Okay, question one.
Yeah, question one. You know, for CAP, I think for the shortage, and let me, if I'm not hitting the exact question, please let me know. But for our CAP amount, so we have the 22,000. As we go into a shortage, let's say we do a 50% shortage. So both the city of Glendale and the city of Goodyear would be shorted 50% of our CAP water. But we still could almost make that up, that 50%, by utilizing this exchange, because if Goodyear has 17,000 acre feet, it's about 85, a little more than that, that we could exchange still, because they still would have the water, which would make us whole for our amount of CAP. If there becomes a time when CAP is not available, or gets to the point where really we can't exchange because of the low volumes, let's say in a 80, 90, 100%, the volumes are going to be pretty small, but we still could exchange some up until that 100% total loss where there's no water in the CAP. And did that answer your question, Mayor?
Almost. Yeah, almost. So is there a clause that gets us out of this if something goes really wrong? We say, look, this isn't working. We can't get enough water from CAP. We're going to go back strictly to SRP and keep the CAP that we're. Is there something like that to protect us?
Yes, there is. There is an agreement every beginning of every year. So both the city of Goodyear and the city of Glendale get together and would order and to see how much we want. If at some point it isn't, I think, feasible for the city of Glendale to pursue, or if we feel like that situation would happen, we do not have to do the exchange that year. So there are some outs in the agreement.
So even though it's a 10-year, it was each year you have the chance to. Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to tag on to that, so the 8,500 cubic feet is, that's not part of the agreement. The amount of water each year when the agreement's renewed is negotiated. Okay, that makes sense. I have a question. I understand how we're going to get the CAP water, but how is Goodyear going to get the SRP water? Are we already able to deliver SRP water to Goodyear?
Yeah, Mayor, council member. Basically the way they're getting it now. So they basically get the CAP water put into the SRP system. So all we would be doing is delivering our SRP water in the SRP system.
Oh, and
It
they
would-
can just
It would
take
flow
more
right
out.
through.
Okay. They
So
can
there's
just,
really no difference in how Goodyear would receive the water.
okay. And then my last question, Mayor, if I could, is ADWR. Are there other agreements like this that they've approved? There are.
There are starting to be. This is kind of a unique situation for DWR. I think they haven't had one of these in quite a while. I know other cities such as Scottsdale, and I believe some of the other East Valley cities are starting to propose this. So not that we're the guinea pigs, but I think they're going to have to take a long look at this and really look at how really their statutes would apply to this exchange.
Okay, and one more thing, Mayor. So we're doing this now because the orders have to be placed in October, but it's still subject to these other approvals. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Bart, go ahead.
Me first?
Yeah.
Thank
go
you. I really like this agreement. I think I love the cooperation between the two communities. I think we can look at it as like a shock absorber between the two major water sources, and an ability for us to, for ourselves and also for Goodyear to adjust where the water's coming from based on how much is really available and what the long-term look on those reservoirs is. It's virtually no cost. You know, in the big scheme of thing, it is no cost, but there's a little bit of cost to it. But, you know, it's not like we're not having to build a lot of infrastructure. They're not either. They already get SRP water. And so I think this is great. The one question I have, because most of the other council members have asked most of my other questions, but Goodyear's willing in this agreement to exchange up to 8,500 acre feet, which is just under half of their CAP allotment. Do we know if they plan on entering into an agreement like this with other communities, one or more? And you know, why are we at that level instead of being willing to exchange all of their water?
Mayor, Council, really, I think there are other entities out there exploring exchanges. So we might get, let's say, a Peoria or another West Side city to do this that has the same kind of setup that we do with our CAP treatment plants close by the CAP canal. We felt that with this, the 85 was probably, the limit of the amount that we wanted to do just on an operational basis. We have other things in the queue when it comes to shortage. We have our wells, we have other redundancy and resiliency options out there. So we thought, looking at the portfolio, this would be a good addition of that 85 to throw in there during a shortage, on top of our other items that we have for a shortage.
Good. And I would think from Goodyear's point of view, they'd want to diversify, because the more diversified you are, the more resilient you are. And in the water game, that's really important right now, is to be resilient and have options available. So, no, I think this is great. Happy to support it.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine has to do with the cost to Glendale, and you may have answered it in part when you said that there's going to be a charge or a refund from us to Goodyear. Is a $200,000 a year estimate, is that inclusive of that, or are there other expenses?
It is inclusive. Really, it's two things that SRP will do. They'll charge us an administration fee, and also this CSIF charge per acre foot. So that is including both of those. SRP, because they have to account and they take their staff time, that's their administration fee. So that's including, that's all in for this exchange.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to follow up on Council Malnar's question. You're going to have to dumb it down for me a little, okay? Okay. We're gonna share 8,500 square feet. Goodyear's gonna get SRP water. We're gonna get CAP water. But the two waters are dramatically different in cost. So if we get 8,500 feet of Goodyear CAP water, how much is that costing us?
Mayor and council member, it really is the same. It's like we're basically ordering that amount. So we would be paying the same amount, and Goodyear would be paying the same amount, even though the exchange.
I know Goodyear and Glendale would be paying the same, but what is that amount? Because it's more expensive than SRP water.
Mayor, Councilmember Clark, so the way it would work, we would continue to pay for our SRP water at the SRP rate for the exchange, and Goodyear will pay the CAP rate to CAP for their CAP water, even though we're receiving it.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yes.
So there's no cost as a result of where the water source is.
No.
The only cost is that $200,000 in administrative and miscellaneous fees.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. City Manager's report. Mr. Phelps.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, got several items here that shouldn't take too much time. First of all, I want to update regarding something that I know is near and dear to your heart, which is our continued strength in our financial rating as an organization. And recently this week, we received news from Standard & Poor's regarding our city's current rating, which is quite high on our general obligation bonds. S&P not only reaffirmed our existing high credit rating, but they've also moved us our outlook from stable to positive. This is typically the process that rating agencies will do before they then increase and even go to a next higher level of rating. And so one thing they called out in their notes that were provided is they noted really four strengths in the report. One was just the overall strength of the city's finances that the council oversees. It mentioned the management practices that are in place, the continued focus on economic development, and the overall growth in our community. So we think sometimes it may take 6 months, a year, 2 years for that rating then to bump up, but the first process is going from stable to positive, so we see it as very good news. Second, a project our staff's been working on, I know we've had some discussion on this, Dick's House of Sports, which has been looking at doing an experiential retail store on 99th Avenue, just a little bit north of Topgolf, did come in this week and pull permits for their drainage and grading, and we expect to see construction start shortly. This will not affect their store they have at Arrowhead Town Center, which is a large store for them there. This is kind of a new concept they're working on, and I think it fits incredibly well into our experiential retail focus that we've had within the entertainment district. Last Friday, as you know, the sitting vice president in the United States visited Glendale for an event in the Desert Diamond Arena. And this brought literally tens of thousands of people to the Westgate area last Friday. And I just want to commend our public safety team who did an incredible job along with our transportation team. Normally an event of this magnitude and complexity would be something you would plan for weeks, if not months. One can only understand the recent focus on protecting candidates for office based on activities that have happened recently in other parts of the country. And our team had to come in under a very short window and put together a coordinated plan, and it was pulled off incredibly well. They make it look easy, but it's far from easy. And so I just want to recognize our public safety team and our transportation team. Our staff received a lot of really positive feedback from the event organizers for the work that we did. And so again, we make it look easy, but it's a far from easy type of event to do. And again, I think it's always important to recognize that extra work that is being done. And then finally, we have received an offer to acquire a piece of city-owned property located generally near 99th Avenue West, just south of Northern Avenue. And so per council policy, I'm stating that in public, and this is noticed for an e-session item. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. City Attorney's report.
No report today, thank you.
Thank you. Council items of special interest. Councilmember Baldenegger, have you any?
No, sir.
All right, Councilmember Clark?
Nothing, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Milner?
Nothing today, Mayor.
Councilmember Tomanchoff?
Yes, Mayor, I do have one item. I'd like to have staff see if there's an interest in having a discussion about, and I know it would most likely be a budget item, but I want to make sure that we are all on the same page before we get that far, it's been brought to my attention that we don't have ADA accessible playgrounds. And I'd like to have the discussion about, as part of the budget process, but to see if we want to move in that direction, that the surfaces of our playgrounds and the equipment on our playgrounds are not accessible by children who have disabilities. So I'd like to have a conversation whether there'd be interest in putting that in the budget to make at least one playground accessible per district. So we would at least start with 6 around the city. That's my item of interest today. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Turner?
Nothing today, Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
Nothing, Mayor.
And I have nothing. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So move.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, vote nay. Here's your ayes have it. Motion carries. Council meeting is recessed